Hello, everyone. I'm Larry Rosen, President of Edison Research, and welcome to the Infinite Dial UK presentation. Good morning from here in New Jersey. Good afternoon to all of you in Old Jersey and throughout the UK and anywhere around the world tuned in for this webinar. We're so excited to have this opportunity to extend the Infinite Dial franchise to the United Kingdom, and can't wait to show you all this great data we have for you today. Before we get going on that, the most important thing is to thank the two sponsors who very generously brought the Infinite Dial to the United Kingdom, Spotify UK and Bauer Media Group. We can't tell you how appreciative we are that you sponsored this study, brought it to the UK, and we're hoping that this becomes the same kind of annual franchise that it has been here in the United States and Australia and other countries around the world now for many years. If you are watching this webinar live and have any questions as I go through things, please feel free to type those into the Q&A box. I have a team of people watching that box and prepared to answer any questions that you might have. If you're watching this video on replay and have questions, feel free to email them to info@edisonresearch.com, and just the same, we'll do our best to answer them for you. So with all that said, let's start digging into the data. And like I said, we're so proud to present this initial Infinite Dial UK webinar. So now let's dig into the data of the Infinite Dial UK. The Infinite Dial UK is based on a national telephone survey that we did here in the fourth quarter of 2021, based on a sample of 1,000 residents of the UK aged 16 and older. We take all the steps that you take to do as high quality research as you can, so to represent the population of the full UK as thoroughly as possible. One quick note on the study being 16 plus. You may remember, if you know the US Infinite Dial study, that we do that survey 12 plus. I'll be showing comparisons to the USA data. And for those comparisons, we are showing that data among the US 16 plus, so that you might see some numbers representing the USA that are slightly different from what you might remember from the 2021 US data. You're also going to see 16 plus data from Australia. And you're also going to see data from Canada. And I just want to get this one little wiggle out of the way at the beginning. Our Canadian study, because of the rules and regulations in Canada, is a population 18 and older study. So when you see Canadian data, that one's going to be 18 plus as compared to the 16 plus data in the other three countries. But part of the idea here is to compare across these populations. And so that's what you'll be seeing on those graphs. So we'll start by looking at just some general data about devices, media, and technology, and the state of play in the UK there. And the first thing that we show in most of these presentations around the world is smartphone ownership, because so much of digital adoption and digital audio consumption, etc., comes from owning a smartphone. We found the percentage of people in the UK aged 16 and older who own a smartphone to be just a bit lower than our estimate for the USA, 83% of everyone in the UK. And you see it's relatively consistent across the age groups. And as you see on this graph, and you'll see on many of the graphs here, the comparison among the youngest group, which we're calling 16 to 34-year-olds, in the middle, 35, 54-year-olds, and 55 plus, a little bit lower in smartphone adoption, as you might expect, at 80%. But you know, the overwhelming majority of people in the UK owning smartphones, and like I said, so much of digital audio adoption is pulled through by smartphone ownership. We also looked at tablet ownership, owning any kind of tablet, whether for an Apple tablet, iPad tablet, or a Google tablet, or any other kind of tablet. And interestingly, we get exactly the same percentage in the UK as we got in the United States. 53% of everyone 16 and older in the UK saying they own a tablet, with a slightly higher percentage among 16 to 34-year-olds. And then one of the really hot topics in the world of audio over the last several years has been smart speakers. And our estimate, this is for any smart speaker, is that 25% of people in the UK now own a smart speaker. You see that actually peaks among 35, 54-year-olds. but it's 1 in every 4 people say that they have a smart speaker. Which kind of smart speaker do they have? We asked by the individual brands, and you can see that there's some duplication here because these numbers add to more than that 25%. But the leader by a considerable margin, as is the case in the United States as well, is the Amazon Alexa. 19% of people saying they own an Alexa branded smart speaker, 7% for a Google Home or Google Nest smart speaker, and 2% said that they have the Apple HomePod. So here's where we can do our first comparison to the numbers that we have in the USA. And you see that the UK estimate of 25% is sort of in between our 2019 and 2020 estimates for the United States. So maybe a year and a half behind, or between that and 2 years behind our estimate in the United States. I believe that's about the difference in when they launched in the two countries. So that might explain it completely. But doubtlessly, if we had the annual tracking in the UK that we have in the United States, we'd see a similar growth pattern as we're seeing there. And this will be one of the really interesting things to track annually with this infinite dial study. We can also compare that 25% across all 4 of the countries. Again, a reminder, the Canadian one is 18 plus. And you see that while it's the lowest of the 4 numbers, it's essentially exactly the same as our Australian and Canadian estimates, all 3 countries riding that year and a half to 2 years behind the USA estimate on smart speaker adoption. And so again, sort of across the Anglosphere, we have relatively similar numbers. But in the country where it launched first, here in the United States, the number's a little bit higher. And we'll see and watch how they might catch up across these countries going forward. We also asked people in the UK about how many smart speakers they have. If you have a smart speaker, how many do you have in your household? And this one I thought was really interesting. In the top line there, you see the numbers for the UK. And you see that the majority of people who have at least one smart speaker in their household have 2 or more. And 28% of people who have at least one have 3 or more. And those numbers are actually combined higher than the percentage in the United States who have more than one. So like we see in the United States, people in the UK, once they get one, once they sort of get into smart speakers, a lot of people start filling them in throughout their household. Maybe they have one in the living room and they said, let's put one in the bedroom, or let's put one in the kitchen, or both, etc. And that's a trend that we've seen pretty consistently in studies we've been doing around the world, is that people who get them tend to really like them and put them in multiple rooms around their house. So clearly we're seeing the smart speaker have or take on some of the same kind of influence in the UK audio space that we've seen in the US and elsewhere. Next, we'll take a quick diversion away from the world of audio just to look at social media, which we've tracked in the USA studies for years, and we're looking at here in the UK, and this data is, in my opinion, very interesting. 86% of everyone in the UK says that they use some form of social media, including nearly everybody 16 to 34, and very, very sizable majorities of everyone over the age of 35 as well. So social media in the UK, every bit as big as we see here in the United States. It's really spread its wings throughout all population groups at this point. We did ask about individual social media brands, and you see that there's 4 that are extremely well known, 3 that have majority awareness, but not quite as well known. So Facebook with the highest level of awareness at 89%. And maybe some of you watching this are like, how could 11% of people anywhere not know the name Facebook? But that's just the way things work with regard to brands. You would think everyone might know a brand, but there's always people who do not. Sitting right behind Facebook are Instagram, which of course is co-owned with Facebook, Twitter with 85% awareness, and TikTok, the new kid on the block, already 83% of people in the UK saying they're aware of the brand TikTok. Still majorities, but lower. 67% are aware of the name Snapchat, 58% for LinkedIn, and 55% for Pinterest. And then we get to the question of which ones do you use? And here, Facebook really asserts itself as the overwhelming leader. More than half of everyone in the UK, this isn't among people who know it or among social media users. This is 54% of everyone 16 and older in the UK says they use Facebook, well ahead of Instagram at 30%, and then on down the list there. LinkedIn at 26, TikTok at 26, and then Snapchat, Twitter, and Pinterest at 12%. I want to briefly focus in on Twitter because it's always been such a fascinating story. You saw that its awareness was every bit as high as the leading brands in the space. But as we see in the United States and in other places, it's this medium that everyone talks about that gets amplification throughout other news media and elsewhere, but isn't so broadly used. Just 1 in 5 people in the UK say they use Twitter, despite the fact that everyone has heard of Twitter. And that's a consistent pattern we see. As you might expect, there are very big differences in usage of these social media brands by age groups. So the blue bars here represent the 16 to 34-year-olds. The pinkish bars represent 35, 54-year-olds, and the green bars is 55 plus. And you see that Facebook is the clear leader among all age groups. But if you zoom in on those blue bars, zoom in on 16 to 34-year-olds, you see that Instagram, again, co-owned with Facebook, is nearly as high with 56%. And right there are TikTok and Snapchat with young people. A majority of every 16 to 34-year-old in the UK saying that they're using those brands. So as you can tell, lots of 16 to 34s are using many of those brands or a lot of them. LinkedIn is the one, and LinkedIn and Twitter have pretty much equal usage across age groups. And Pinterest actually does the best, 35-54. It's long been thought of as a bit of a parents kind of social media, so that might be what's indicated there. We can also compare these numbers in the UK to what we see in the United States. And here there are some pretty big differences. So the purple bars here are the UK numbers overall, and the blue bars below them are the American numbers. And you see in several of the cases, there's a lot more usage in the United States. Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest in particular, much higher usage in the USA. Snapchat pretty equal. Twitter a little higher here in the United States. The two that have higher usage just by a small amount in the UK as compared to the USA are LinkedIn and TikTok, but just by a little bit. So similar, but numbers that lag a bit. We also asked, what's the one social media brand that you use the most? And here you see Facebook really the dominant brand. More than half of everyone who uses any social media says Facebook is the one they use the most. Just under half of 16 to 34-year-olds say Facebook. And so, yes, all these other brands combined are more than half of the number 16 to 34. But you see no single brand really challenging Facebook as the most used social media platform, even among 16 to 34-year-olds. And once you get past that age group, Facebook just asserts itself more and more as the leading social media usage brand. We can also compare that to the United States, and you see that Facebook remains a little bit more firmly entrenched as the social media brand used most in the UK as compared to the USA. Although you will see that in the USA, we have WhatsApp as a social media brand. We didn't use that in the UK study, so that's part of the reason the numbers are different. But the big one that you'll see that is different is Instagram is far ahead in the US by comparison to the numbers we see in the UK in terms of people saying that's the one social media platform that they use the most. So similar numbers, but you do see just how dominant Facebook is in the UK social media environment. Now let's turn to some data about radio listening, AM, FM, and DAB listening in the UK. We'll start by we asked the question, have you listened to the radio on AM, FM, or DAB in the last week? And 81%, a very robust percentage of our sample said, yes, I have listened to the radio in the last week. And you see that's consistent across the age groups that we have here. Some of you might be used to seeing slightly higher numbers from Radar for weekly listening, but let me remind you that this is a telephone survey where we're just asking a single question about listening into the radio in any way in the last week, whereas Radar takes steps to jog people's memories and remind them of all the cases where they might have listened to the radio. And you can get a sense for just how big that number is when you compare the numbers we got in the UK to the numbers we get in the other 3 countries where we asked this question. You see that 81% for the UK is higher than the estimates we get in Canada or Australia, or particularly here in the United States. So people are listening to the radio in the UK, and they are remembering that they have listened to the radio in the UK in greater numbers than in these 3 other English-speaking countries around the world. We also asked about, do you own a radio? Do you have a radio in your household? And you see 78% of people said yes, only 22% said they don't have a radio in their household. And pretty robust numbers here, 14% of people in the UK, and consistent across age groups, saying they have 4 or more radios in their household. So you see, really, radio remains very central to the lived experience of people in the UK. We can compare that number of radios in the household in the UK to the most recent time we asked this number in the United States. This was in the 2020 Infinite Dial study. And you see it was 10 percentage points higher back then, people saying they don't have a single radio in their household. 1 in 3 Americans saying they don't have a radio. And again, this is from January 2020, 10 points clear of the number we have here in the 4th quarter of 2021 in the UK. So like I said, there's a lot of evidence of just how central radio remains a part of life for people in the UK. And we can sort of total up these numbers and get a sense for the relationship between owning a radio and owning a smart speaker. So again, the top line is the data for the UK. 58% of everyone in the UK says they have a radio in their home, but don't have a smart speaker. 20% say they have both a radio and a smart speaker in their home. 6% say they have a smart speaker, but not a radio in their home. So 6% of people seemingly have replaced radio in their homes with the smart speaker. And only 16% of people in their homes have neither a radio nor a smart speaker. If they're consuming audio at home, they're using yet other devices, their phone or other devices. And you do see the difference from the United States, where here in the United States, we have more people saying that they have neither a radio nor a smart speaker, and just a lot fewer people saying that they have a radio at all. So that's a radio. Now let's look at this sort of burgeoning new world of online audio and see how that compares. 75% of people in the UK age 16 and older told us that they've listened to some form of audio online in the last month. This is sort of a roll-up of a bunch of questions that we asked throughout the survey of different forms of online audio consumption. You see, again, it's relatively consistent across age groups. It's high as 16 to 34, as you might expect at 81%. But even 55 plus, 72% of people saying they've listened to some form of online audio in the month before we called them for this survey. And you see that that number is higher than our estimate in the United States, where we track it back on this graph to 2014. You see the number has gone up and up. Our current estimate, 68, 69% in the United States. And so you see that UK number, it's 75%. Online audio in its various forms has been adopted in greater numbers throughout the UK as compared to the numbers in the United States. Big numbers in both cases, but higher yet in the UK. And the UK number is the highest of any of the 4 English-speaking countries where we have this data, just by a little bit, but that's 75%, a couple points higher than our Australian estimate, and then a couple points more to Canada and the United States. That was monthly. Now let's look at weekly. 66% of everyone says that they've used online audio in some form in the last week. So you get a very good sense that if you've done it in the last month, you're very likely to have done it in the last week. The huge percentage of those who've done one have done the other. And that 66% again is higher than our USA estimate by a little bit. Our current estimate in the United States is 62%. 66% of everyone in the UK has listened to some form of online audio in the last week. And again, that number ties the Australian number for the highest. But online audio adoption seems to be as high in the UK as any other place that we've done the infinite dial. Switching over to the car environment, and what are people listening to and using there? Well, what are the audio sources that you currently ever use in your car? Overwhelmingly, the leader, as you would expect, I think, is AM, FM, or DAB radio. 72% of people who say they've been in a car in the last month say that they've used the radio in their car. Far back in second place, and often surprising to people, is the CD player at 37%. People still have CD players in their cars, and people still use the CD player in their car. 29% say they've listened to their own digital music in their car in some fashion. 26% of people say they've listened to some form of online audio in their car currently, and 15% say that they've listened to podcasts in the car. So podcasts, the other really hot topic in the world of audio. We'll get to a big section about podcasting later in the presentation. 15% of people in the UK say they currently listen to podcasts in their car. How do those numbers compare to the United States? Well, interestingly, the radio number and the CD player number, extremely similar. The USA number, a couple points higher for radio, where we only ask about AM and FM. We have no DAB equivalent. The CD player, essentially the same, a couple points lower. We do have higher estimates in the United States for bringing phone-based media or bringing streaming in some fashion or podcasts into the car. 33% in the US for online audio as compared to 26%, and double the number for podcasts in the car as compared to in the US as compared to the UK. So 30% of Americans saying they listen to podcasts in their car as compared to listening to podcasts in the UK. Why is that the case? I would have to guess as to why that is. It could be technological. Maybe it's easier to do it given the state of technology in the cars in the United States. It could be just further development of podcasts. It could be how radio competes for content with podcasts. That would have to be the subject of a separate inquiry. But it is interesting to see how much farther ahead podcast is in the United States, specifically in the car, as compared to the UK. I'll give you a little teaser, though, for the podcasting section coming up. Just because podcasts are lower in car in the UK is not going to necessarily print through to podcasts being much higher in the USA in general as compared to the UK. We also asked about, do you have an in-dash information entertainment system in your car? And 18% of people said yes, that they do. Pretty flat across the age groups. And that number is similar to what we get in the United States, just a couple points behind. So maybe that couple point difference would explain a little bit of that podcast differential. And have you ever listened to online audio in your car through your mobile phone? 38% of everyone in the UK say that they have done that. And that one we can compare to the US. And again, that one is well behind our estimate for the United States, back to our 2017 estimate in the United States. And again, not necessarily knowing why that is, but the USA, as is well documented, is a bit more of a car culture. People are more likely to have longer commutes, spend more time in their cars, travel to work in their cars, etc. And so that could be a big part of the reason why those numbers are higher in the USA. People may be spending more time in their cars and therefore having more impetus to bring technology into the car if they're there more and using that environment more. Next, we look at some of the online audio brands in the UK. And so we start by just saying, are you familiar with these brands? And again, this is based on the total population, everyone 16 and older. And here's the list of brands that we asked about. And you see broad differences in numbers from the top to the bottom. And the leading brand in terms of awareness, the best known brand among these that we asked about in the online audio space is Spotify, with 71% of everyone in the UK saying that they are aware of that name, Spotify, followed somewhat closely by Amazon Music, BBC Sounds, and YouTube Music, all over 60%. A little jump back to Apple Music. And then we get down below the majority level, but sizable percentages familiar with names like Audible, SoundCloud, and even things like Deezer and Radio Player and TuneIn, etc. So lots of brands that people are aware of, with Spotify as the leader in brand awareness throughout the country. We asked everyone if they've used these brands in the last month. And this is the percentage of the whole population that says they've used each of these brands in the last month. Here you see that Spotify is the market leader at 30% of everyone in the UK saying they've used Spotify, followed by BBC Sounds at 21%, YouTube Music at 14%, and on down the list. We asked people as well whether they've used any of these brands in the last week. And you see Spotify is the clear market leader here, 28% of everyone in the UK saying they have used Spotify in the week before we called them. In second place is BBC Sounds at 16%, YouTube Music at 11%, and single-digit percentages for these other brands down the list. Okay, so finally, let's turn to probably the most high-profile part of the Infinite Dial presentation, and that is podcasting, the hottest topic in the world of audio now for several years. And I think all of you will find this part really interesting. So we started out just by asking, are you familiar with that term, podcasts or podcasting? 71% of everyone in the UK is familiar with podcasts, relatively similar across the age group, 73% of younger people, but 67% of people 55 plus are aware of podcasting. How does that compare to our USA number? A little bit behind the US number between our 2019 and 2020 estimates, but a very high percentage. And it's actually, interestingly, the lowest level of the 4 English-speaking countries at 71%. Australia has been the leader every time we've done this in terms of people being aware of podcasting. USA and Canada numbers tied, UK number a little bit lower just in terms of awareness. But that's merely, are you aware of podcasting? We also asked about, do you listen to podcasts? And 59% of everyone in the UK say they've ever listened to a podcast. 63% of 16 to 34-year-olds, 61% of 35, 54-year-olds, and 54% of those age 55 and older. How does that compare to the USA number? Well, even though awareness of podcasting is lower in the UK as compared to the USA, the percentage of people who say they've ever listened to a podcast is a couple points higher. 59% in the UK is a couple points higher than our 2021 estimate here in the USA of 57%. So once again, even though awareness was lower, listening was higher. And it makes you think, gee, if that initial number, if awareness of the medium continues to grow in the UK, who knows how big the listening numbers might get. And you see that 59% is essentially tied with Australia for the highest number of any of these countries, 1 point behind, but a couple points higher than our estimates in the USA and Canada. What about, have you listened to a podcast in the last month? 41% of everyone in the UK saying, yes, I've listened to a podcast in the last month. Pretty equal across the age groups. And how does that compare to the United States? Well, that's actually bang on exactly the same estimate. 41% is our USA estimate for 2021, and we get exactly the same 41% in the UK. Now, my understanding is that monetization of podcasts or the podcasting business has not developed to quite the same level in the UK as has been seen in the United States. So maybe this graph can be part of the impetus for more money coming into the space as people can see that our estimate for monthly usage of podcasting in the UK is exactly the same as what we get in the United States. You also see that the estimate in the UK is higher than our estimates for Canada or Australia. tied with the USA for the highest of these 4 countries. So any theories that people have that podcast lags in the UK is just not supported by our Infinite Dial report. Who is listening to podcasts in the UK? You see that the population of the UK is on the left, which is 51% female. The monthly podcast consumers, 50-50, exactly the same, fully representative in terms of men and women relative to the population. Who is listening in terms of age? You see virtually no differential there either. The people who are in that 41% listening to podcasts have exactly the same age profile as the total population. What about weekly listening? Have you listened to a podcast in the last week? 25% of everyone in the UK, age 16 and older, said they've listened to a podcast in the last week. In this case, the number is a little bit behind our USA estimate for this year, which was 29%, but higher than our 2020 estimate. So the monthly estimate, exactly the same as the US. The weekly estimate, just a little bit behind the American estimate, but essentially the same as our Australian estimate, ahead of our Canadian estimate. The USA number just a little bit more advanced on the weekly level. So again, it shows that podcasting is seemingly as robust or nearly as robust in the UK as we see here in the United States or sort of across the English-speaking world. Finally, we look at how many podcasts do people listen to, and we get a very similar estimate in the UK as what we see in the United States, and just the pattern that we see around the world, which is, well, many people say they've listened to any podcast in the last week will say just 1 or 2. There's a sizable percentage saying 4 or 5 or 6 to 10, or even a small number saying 11 or more podcasts in the last week. But you see on the right-hand side of the screen there, in total, on average, people who listen to any are listening to 5 podcasts episodes in the last week. And that shows that this is a robust medium that deserves the attention it's getting, deserves the excitement that it's getting, the creativity that's flowing into this space. And I hope that we'll see the same kind of investment in the UK podcasting market that we've seen in the United States, and that maybe the Infinite Dial UK can help bring that across. And so there you have it. That's the initial presentation of the Infinite Dial UK. Like I said, we were just so excited to extend Infinite Dial into the UK. I hope you learned a lot from it. I hope this is the kind of data that people working in these areas can use to build their businesses and grow. And like I said, if you have any questions at all, we'll keep that Q&A box open for a little while longer, or you can email those questions to info@edisonresearch.com. Once again, I'm Larry Rosen. Once again, I'd like to thank Spotify UK and Bauer Media Group for bringing us the Infinite Dial UK, and have a great day. Thank you.